Well, welcome to episode 27 of our adventure game, and this time we're using C#, and today we're loading in a game from File. So I'll just run it through so you can see how it works, and then we'll step through the code and see how it's all obtained. So this is as it was before, no change there. Now we've got this new menu, and it's asking us to select the game that we want to load, of which there are two, the default game and this new one called school.txt. I'm going to run the second one in just so you can see some errors that or some things that need fixing. So the first thing is we get because we've put debug mode on, let me just drop this out the way at the back. We've got this console with the listings in. Now, because this is running in C#, I can scroll up and down the console, which I couldn't do on the Python one. So we've now got, we can see all of the shared locations. We've still got where the descriptions are kind of overlapping. We've still got areas where the key retriever here is kind of pushing this out. The description is it needs some tidying up. It needs some work. It's okay. It's only a debug thing, so it's not desperately important, but I'd like to get it right. So we'll just press enter to continue that. Right, so we'll carry on as before, putting the name in. So although this is read in from a file now, we've got a different set of characteristics. So now we've got SWAT nerd and so on. So let's of course choose nerd. So it gives us the character. And can you defeat the bully and escape? So that's our mission for today. Now the menu comes up fine so far, but when we move south, which I'll do now, which has got a long description on it, you'll see that the menu is cut off, and that's because the description is so long that it needs fixing. So that's something I can do next. I was going to call this the last episode, but I've still got work to do, and there's another reason I need to do that, and that is that in order to get through, let's just show you. I'm going to try and go south into the office by pressing 4, and it says you need the key retriever in your inventory to do this. Now the clue at the top here is that the doors have gaps under them. The door at the top has a key in the other side, if only you could get it out. So obviously you need a key retriever, and here we've got some pliers, so we can at least take the pliers. Our menu is still cut off, so we'll go back into the dormitory, and we'll take the rusty key. Actually, let me just examine it first. Examine the rusty key. An old rusty key looks like the sort used for a cupboard. Oh, that's handy because we need to go to the cupboard. So we'll press 6. We need the rusty... Oh, I didn't pick it up, did I? So let's pick up the rusty key. Now we should be able to go into the cupboard. Yep, we've entered. Right, we've got a bunch of stuff here. So if I examine the coat hanger, it says a wire coat hanger, the type you can use as a replacement for a car aerial. So we've got pliers and we've got a coat hanger. So if we were able to craft something, we could craft from the pliers and coat hanger a wire, and then we could use the wire and the paper, which I'll show you now, a sheet of paper torn from a school exercise book, to make a key retriever. So that's something that we need to expand on. The classes already have the ability to do that, because if you recall, the item class had craft items in there, uses. So the underlying code is sort of there ready to use. It's not going to take much more to add a craft menu to our thing, so we'll do that on another occasion. But I just wanted to show you how you could load in from file. So I'll quit it at this point, just so that we can go through the step through and see how it's actually loaded in from file. Right, so let's start up the game, and I've put a stop point on our load game so that we can go through how to load this in from file. So we've got the debug mode on. I don't think we need that, so I will disable it. Okay, so we're in the load game inside the game class, and we've already got some things set up. The current working directory has just been taken from directory.getCurrentDirectory, so it's a built-in C# function, which is quite handy. Then we got the load path as combining the current working directory with the games folder. Now you can't see this in this project because it's in the bin folder of the C# debug output, but it's exactly the same files as appear in the Python and Lua versions. So we've got exactly the same string file. It's now going to check whether that load path exists, and if it does, it's then going to get the files and store them in this object here. So let's press F11. There we are. So files has now got two files in it, which is default game.txt and school.txt. If the files count is greater than 0, which it is, there's two of them, then we're going to use the keyboard menu as we've done before to find out which file we want to get. So let me untick that. We'll press continue. And we're now, which one do we want to load in? I'm going to load in the default one because we're more familiar with that one. There we go. So it's now going to, the load file name has been set. We're now going to load from file, passing that file name. So let's go into that one. Now the load from file has a bunch of variables up here which are set. And then we're going to use file.readAllLines to get all the lines in the file into this string array here. So let's step through that. So return value is set to true. There we are. It's read all the lines. So if we look at that string, we'll see that there are 81 lines, and of course we can, if we wish to, look at each line if we wanted, which is quite handy, which is nice about the way C# debugging is so detailed. So that's brilliant. Okay, then we've got some kind of empty variables up here which we'll be using and reusing down here. So we'll step through all of those. Right, so we're going through, stepping through each line in those 81 lines. So we've got one of them out now, which is item.name equals keycard. So we're going to split that into two parts. So the line itself is item.name equals keycard, and we're going to use the equals here to split it into two halves. So let's do that. Press F11, and we've now got the parts have got two pieces in there. If I could just get hold of the press the little arrow. So we've got item.name and keycard. So those are the two parts that we've got from our split line. We've used this particular overload for the split function so that we get rid of empty entries, and we can also pass in a string as the separator rather than a character, but you have to pass it in as a new string array, which is slightly odd, but it works. So we're now checking whether the length of the parts is greater than 0. In other words, we've got a successful split. And then from there, we're going to get some more variables out, again using split, but this is the more conventional split that you're used to, where we pass it just simply a single character. And then it does the same job, but it just uses that dot character. So it's kind of an alternative way of using split. So let's go through. So we've got some new variables now. We've got the object, which is item, the prop, which is name, and the value, empty string. So from our first original line, which says item.name equals key card, we've now separated that into the object, which is item. It's an item object. The name is the property, so it's the name property of the item object, and its value is key card. So we've separated those out from that line, and we're now going to trim them up and sort them out as to where they're going. So let me just press F11. This just allows us to trim the parts in case there were any strings that were left. So value is still key card, but it's had any spare spaces stripped away from it. So the object equals item, it does. So we're going to step in here. If the property equals name, which it does, then the name variable that we've set up called name is the value. Okay, so the value of that is now set to key card. So we're going to go through each line in turn and go through each of the properties. Description, craft items, uses, container. Once it's got to the container part, it's then going to add to the items using the add to items function that we have used and created before, somewhere up here. So that will just do as it did when we were using the default one. We're adding it to the shared items dictionary. So that's how we're reading stuff in from the file. Now there's a couple of places where we need to do some special stuff. I've got these two functions called fixList and fixInt. Now in both Python and Lua I could make them private to this version, to this static function here. I could make them sub-functions, sub-procedures of this. I try to do it here, but because of the version of C# that I'm using, it says I can't do that until I reach version 8.3. I believe I'm using 7. So it may be that I just need to upgrade the .NET that I'm using for this class, because I did start it off a long time ago. So probably that would be easily got round, but I thought, well, for the sake of it, I'll just have separate fixList and fixInt functions which do the same job. It's just that it would have been nice if they were kind of exclusive to this load from file in the same way as they are in Lua and Python. Okay, so we're going to go through the craft items. I think that would be next. I'm going to put a stop sign there and we'll go ahead. Right, so let's press F11. So the value that we're going to send through is, oh, it's actually an empty string. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. So let's press F11, and this is going to the fixed list. So we've got a new empty list being created up here. Now, if the value that we've passed through is not an empty string, then it would split the line using the semicolon, removing any empty entries, so that you would actually get the data as a string array. and then it would, for each string in that data, it would add it to our list. If it is a value is empty string, then obviously this isn't going to run, and it will just return our empty list. So if I hover my thing over here, empty list, nothing in it, so that's what's being returned. There we go. So that's a way of making sure that from our text file, if it's given no value, we can still get an appropriate value stored, either in this case an empty list if we've got nothing in it, and of course in the uses, which is the one that we're going to do next, we can do the same. So if I press F11, and it'll step through again. Right, so now the prop is uses, it's going to fix int and the value. Now you'll notice that I've just got value here, which is 0. I haven't got a default one. So if I press F11, in the fix int, I had a default value which I could use here. So that if I had passed in, say, 60, then it would have given it a default value of 60. So what it's doing is it's going to see if it can pass the value, which is actually 0, but if it was an empty string, then the passing would fail. But because it can be passed, it will return the result of passing value. Value is the string 0, result is the number, integer 0. So this, if you've not come across it before in C#, the try pass is extremely valuable. It returns a Boolean value whether it succeeded to pass the information, but the output comes from this parameter here using the out keyword, so the result will then hold whatever we've passed out. So slightly unusual way of doing things, but dead handy. So we'll just return the result there. So it's going to go through those values, and from a text file it will fill up all of these before. So it's got the same thing for the enemy, location, player, game, and narrator. So all the classes can be filled with the appropriate information from a file. So that's really what I wanted to show you, how that can load in from a file. The actual file itself, I did have that open in Python, if I can just find that. Games, default game, there we go. So this was the file that was created. So it's not a standard type of file, it's not JSON, it's not XML. It's kind of one I put together myself just so that it could be easily handwritten by somebody who wasn't perhaps that aware of how to write JSON or XML files raw by hand. This was quite easy. You've got item.name, description, craft items, uses, and container. So you kind of copy and paste those in for as many items as you have, and then fill them in with whatever details you want to. Then you've got the same for a weapon, name, description, craft item, uses, container, and damage. Then you've got the same for enemy, name, description, health, strength, and drop item. And then you've got the locations ones, which are perhaps the biggest ones, which have got all these properties that you can fill in. And you either leave them blank, or you can put some data in there. And if there's something that needs to be split into a list, such as this, you simply separate it with semicolon. So it's fairly easy to write a game file which can be loaded in. So that's why the school game file, which I'll just show you, that one, is a longer file. It's got more in it, but that completely changes the way the game looks and runs because of the contents of this file. So that's something we can look into next time, is to craft some items which we would need to solve this particular game, the School.txt game. So I'll get that running next time, and I think that will definitely be the final episode of all of these ones here. Plus I'll do some tidying up of the UI so that it looks neater, perhaps put some boxes round the inputs, make sure that it's set at a fixed width of say 80 columns or something like that, so it just really tidies everything up. So nearly there.